All right. Good morning. I hope by now you've all had a chance to go out and look at the plethora of tutorials out there. And I'm going to point you out that there's a lot that you can get from looking at old tutorials, but I'm going to begin this 60 minutes of instruction here pointing out that really when you've got a good solid AutoCAD base, there is a lot you can do by just drafting in a drawing that has blocks as its kind of main descriptive engine in AutoCAD, and then bringing things into um, Inventor and using Sketchblocks, making components of them, and then kind of more or less pushing everything out from your basic 2D sketching. You'll see, especially when you get into trying to show how things move, if you get into that in terms of a way to train your brain into the way building information management systems and more dynamic systems work. It'll be, you think things a lot better out to start, as you'll see using Sketchblocks. So we're just going to go through the interface here. I did found right now I'm clicking in and out on my mouse the right direction. So we're going to go through the next 10 minutes just, and you should have done the same yourself, but we're going to go through a couple of things you may have discovered by now. I here have an assembly which came about by actually drafting a part originally on AutoCAD, a drawing where I just made these as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks in 2D. The holes were not there. Each was just a closed polyline with a one shared point so that I could bring that in by constraints. So we're going to go back and show you how we came to that. But I'm now in an assembly view, and you start to see again the different ways you can, master default, master, right? All kinds of different things down here over in the, what we call that the browser. Okay, so that was in the view. If you remember in the view here, the user interface, this was the browser over here on the left. So we want to make sure we can get that one back in Revit or in AutoCAD. And you realize there are then a couple of views. I'm in the assembly view here, and I show you the gusset plate, and it's got some information here. And you're going to see, in terms of being able to kind of, I'm not certain, but in terms of turn the visibility on, for instance, on that particular point, or on right-click, turn the visibility on that plane. That is in the assembly view. And for instance, especially as you define work axes, that will be worthwhile. So for instance here, in this member here, which is behind here, right, I can hopefully turn on the visibility, which it is, of some work axes, right? Now that is the assembly view. You then also have then the modeling view, which then gets you really, as you start getting into playing around. For instance, if I'm going to put a hole up in here, I'm really going to want to do it in modeling view, and then I double click on that thing there. I'm seeing in the gusset, I've got a couple of holes there already. I could basically go ahead and stick a hole in. We're going to grab a face here, put that in there, grab 2 reference points. A couple things, we use the holes typically we're going to go through in this example. Very often you're going to go through all. I've just got a 1-inch hole here, so I'm going to now give it a reference. From there, immediately it's got a driven dimension, 150. And if you're smart, you can kind of keep track of all these dimensions as they're being assembled, because they will be useful to drive something off of something else. And I'm going to also give now the second reference, which will be kind of a 2-point, if you would. 2-point there, we're going to make that 150. So you start to see, and through all, okay, and I've got a hole there. So that's what you can kind of see, the difference between the modeling view and the assembly view. When I'm still in the model, I have to go right click, finish edit. Once I get there, I can get back to assembly view. All right, what I want to show you, however, is also here as we go through, I think it's in the manage view, environments, application options and document settings. So right here is where a lot of stuff is set up. You won't see the whole thing, and you're losing some down on the bottom, but these are a lot of your options in terms of saving. And particularly the one that we were talking about here is, you know, in terms of the background image or the reflection image here, you can change that. If you're doing do with the lobby cube, that's the one that changes the background when you change it to Chrome. Information on what happens when you want to, you know, often you want to really see these other parts. So there's a lot of clicky clicks here. You're going to see through here. Settings, etc. They're all kind of stored within here. So the application options, and that should be familiar to those in AutoCAD, used to AutoCAD, and the document settings as well. And bill of materials. So looks very similar, if you think about it, to the complexity of all the different things that you get within Civil 3D, more so than AutoCAD. And then the idea of customization here, we're not going to be going and doing that here, but as always, there is always a lot of customization that you can do within any of these programs. And usually that's set, you're going to want to be drafting off a standard so someone else is dealing with it. So that is 6 minutes then on just the general settings here. Lots of different stuff. There's add-ins available, particularly if you want to do these translators here. When we start talking about, you know, translating in and out of any kind of drafting engine, especially when it's a parametric modeler, is going to become a little bit more problematic. And there's just so many different formats out there. We've already looked at things like DWG, DXF is another typical AutoCAD one. You've got CATIA here, which is a 3D modeler. You have SketchUp, you have OBJs, you've got just an incredible number of VRMLs. And so, and then here I see one for SolidWorks, which is really one that you're going to want to at least be aware of. SolidWorks engine is the same engine that's now being used along with Microsoft for 3D VIA. All right, so that is kind of, so get around and playing around with your settings. And now I've put a hole in this one, and here's one I don't quite know, but we'll show you now how to put a hole to try to kind of match. And I believe the way that would best work is I figure here, if I had to make a work axis here, I go into here and I make I'm in this part now, I'm in the gusset, right? I'm editing, and I can add, hopefully I can add a point. So I'm going to grab a work point. Don't know if that's taking, and I can add an axis. Now that's axis. I'm not sure why it's not showing. There it is. It's there, and it should be able to be. It should be visible. And the question now will become is if when I get out of this one, right click outside the model space, right click again. Now I can go back in and double click in here. Well, now I'm in this other one. So if I'm in the modeling view, it looks like I'm kind of losing that basic location of that hole. But for now, I'm just going to show you once again, you can put in a hole. You're in the, now you're in member BE. We'll talk about how you number members in a truss. But I'm going to go ahead and put in a hole. Drill point. Generally we're going through, and I've made these all 25 millimeter in my example here. Grab the face, you've done that, kind of tell it this face, grab the hole, and then your reference here is going to give you a distance. I'll make this 100, and if you think about where I placed that a second ago, it's going to be some odd calculations of sines and cosines to get these things to line up. Same thing here. Generally, we've been trying to keep those 3 inches away. That's very typical. 75 millimeter, and then I hit OK and apply. Now, right click, finish edit, and yet to find it, but how to get those holes to line up in an easy, straightforward manner is going to be generally dimension driven. So if you notice there, these things are not the same, and that's where, in effect, if you double click on one, you should start to see. It'd be nice to see the other one as well so you can match it up. So I'm double clicking on one, right, finish editing, and you can see how these holes are in 2 different places. So that's 10 minutes. Remember, learn to play around with the applications, the document settings, and the like. We can always reinstall, and we'll then go back to how we do this using Sketchblocks. Thanks for listening.